By the time the city was finished with him, my neighbor had 3 citations taped to his front door, a court date he could not talk his way out of, and a tow truck parked in front of the house he had worked so hard to keep me away from. And I never once raised my voice. Not a single time. My name is Cole. I am 34 years old, and a little over a year ago, I honestly believed the hardest part of owning my first home was going to be the mortgage payment. My girlfriend Hannah, 31F, and I, 34M, bought our place last August. It was the first house either of us had ever owned, and we were proud of it in a way that probably sounds silly to people who grew up with money. I am a diesel mechanic. Hannah does the books for a dental office, and between the two of us, we had saved for almost 6 years to make that down payment. We have a little boy, Theo, who was barely 2 when we moved in, and a dog named Biscuit, who is convinced he runs the entire street. The house is nothing fancy. It is a narrow lot in an older part of town, the kind of block where the homes sit close together, and a good chunk of the parking is public curb space that everybody is supposed to share. But it was ours, and we loved every inch of it. The house directly to our south had been a rental for years. The tenants who lived there when we moved in were quiet, kept to themselves, waved when they saw us, and that was the whole relationship. Easy. Perfect. Honestly then, about a month after we got our keys, a for sale sign went up in their yard, and that is where this whole thing starts. Around the start of November, I noticed work trucks at the property and a crew up on the old detached garage redoing the roof. Now here is a fun little detail about my fun little lot. There is no easement, and that garage was put up maybe 30 years ago, a few feet over the property line, so part of the structure literally sits on land that is technically mine. There is nothing I can do about that. It predates me by 3 decades, and I had made my peace with it the day we signed the papers. So when I saw the crew, I figured, okay, somebody bought the house, and they are fixing the roof before they move in. New owners, fresh start. I was actually happy about it. The next morning, I walked out my back door with my coffee, and there was a mountain of roofing debris in my yard. Old shingles, tar paper, rotten plywood, a carpet of loose nails, all of it dumped across my grass and piled up against my privacy fence. No dump trailer anywhere. They had simply decided that my yard was the most convenient place to throw the worst of it. I stood there and let my coffee go cold in my hand, just looking at it. There was a man on a ladder maybe 20 feet away, and when he caught me staring, he gave me this little wave, like we were old friends, and went right back to peeling shingles and tossing them over the fence into my grass. I did not yell. I want you to understand that, because it matters later. I went inside, got my phone, and called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out, looked at the pile, looked at the man on the roof, took some photos, and made a report. The man on the roof said it was temporary and he would clean it up. I figured that was the end of it. 3 days later, the crew was back, and so was the debris, more of it this time, and once again it was all in my yard instead of theirs. So I went out, and I made myself very clear. I did not touch anybody. I told all 4 of them they had 10 minutes to get every nail, every shingle, and every scrap of wood off my property, and that the next pile was going straight back over the fence onto their own driveway. Then I picked up an armful of their garbage myself and set it neatly on the concrete in front of their garage, so there was no confusion about whose mess it was. That was the first time I met the man who would spend the next 6 months of his life trying to get a reaction out of me. His name was Brett. Brett did not introduce himself like a normal person. He just looked at me with this smug, satisfied grin, like I had finally given him the thing he wanted, and said, real friendly, "Hey, no need to get worked up, neighbor." I went back inside. I did not get worked up, but I felt the temperature of the whole thing change in that moment, and I was right to. Winter bought me a few quiet weeks. The snow came. There was no yard work to fight about, and my privacy fence did exactly what a privacy fence is supposed to do. But I started noticing little things even then. Most mornings there would be a couple of empty beer cans and those little airplane bottles of liquor in my yard near the corner, right where someone rounding the bend toward Brett's driveway might toss them out a car window. I would pick them up, throw them away, and say nothing. I started to understand that Brett liked to drink, and that he liked one even more when he was behind the wheel coming home from work. I filed that away. I did not know yet how useful it would be. Then spring hit, and the real campaign began. Brett could not pass me without a comment. If I was at the mailbox and he was outside, It was always something with a little hook in it. How you doing? No? Okay. Love you, neighbor. Always with that grin. If I was working in my open garage, the whole family would walk by on the sidewalk and call my name, my actual first name, knowing I had never given it to them, just to see if I would look up. I would stare at them for exactly 1 second, with no expression at all, and then go back to my work. That drove them crazy. I could see it. The less I gave them, the harder they pushed. The parking was its own little war. There is public curb on both sides of my house, and the rule on our street is that you park near your own place and leave the rest open. Brett decided that the entire stretch of curb in front of my house was his family's personal lot. His truck, his wife's car, every guest who ever came over, all of it lined up in front of my windows so that the space directly in front of his place stayed wide open and clear. I never said a word about it. I just started taking a time-stamped photo every single morning of the same row of cars in front of my house. Every morning. I did not know what I would do with them yet. I just knew, in my gut, that a man like Brett was going to keep handing me things, and I wanted to be holding all of them when the time came. Brett's wife was named Tara 30F, and she handled what you might call the public relations side of things. When I had moved their roofing debris back onto their driveway, Tara had gone on the neighborhood's social media group, which I am not even a member of because I cannot stand that kind of drama, and written this unhinged post about how the new guy next door was clearly on drugs, how nobody could understand why I was acting the way I was, and how they were strongly considering calling child services on us for the way we treated our son and our dog. I did not see it. I only know it existed because a neighbor across the street, a retired guy named Frank, printed it out and slid it into my mailbox with a sticky note that just said, "Thought you should have a copy of this. Do not let it get to you." Frank, it turns out, had lived on that street for 22 years and had watched this exact family operate before. More on Frank later. He becomes important. I did not respond to the post. I do not have an account on that site, and I genuinely do not care what strangers think of me. But I did keep Frank's printout, dated, in a folder. Another thing in the folder. The third member of the household was Brett's mother. Her name was Donna, and Donna was the loudest of the three by a wide margin. She seemed to have decided that getting a reaction out of me was her full-time hobby. She would stand on their side of the fence and yell things at me while I worked. Day after day, and I would put my earbuds in and turn the music up until she was just a moving mouth I could not hear. I never once yelled back. I want to be very clear about the pattern here, because the pattern is the whole story. The more I ignored them, the worse they got. Every time I refused to give them the fight they were starving for, they escalated, looking for the version of me that would finally lose it. They never found him. There was no version of me that was going to lose it. I had decided that a long time ago, standing in my cold coffee, looking at a pile of nails in my grass. By late spring, we were deep into mowing season, and mowing is sort of my thing. I mow every Sunday, usually in the morning before the heat gets bad, and I take pride in the lines. The week it all came to a head, Brett's family decided to run a garage sale Thursday through Sunday, 4 straight days, and of course every car belonging to every customer ended up parked along the curb in front of my house instead of theirs. By Sunday morning, my whole frontage was a parking lot for their yard sale. I went out to mow anyway, because it was Sunday and that is what I do. By my 4th lap, 2 of the family members had started standing on the sidewalk near my property line, right in my path, trying to make me stop or steer around them. So I steered around them. I did not look at them. I did not turn the music down. A couple of laps after that, there were 8 of them out there, shouting things I could not hear, waving their arms, trying to get into my face. I just kept mowing my own grass on my own property. Then an older man I had never seen before came jogging up behind my mower, reaching for the controls, trying to shut the machine off while I was driving it. And here is the moment where, a year ago, I might have done something stupid. Instead, I stopped the mower myself, calmly, turned the key, took my earbuds out, stood up, and pulled out my phone and started filming. I did not say one word. I just filmed all 8 of them, in a clear line on my property, surrounding a man trying to operate my equipment for me. Then I called the police, told dispatch there was a group on my lawn refusing to leave and someone had put their hands on my mower, and asked them to send a car. And while I waited, I sat back down, put the key back in, and finished mowing my lawn. Every last lap, the officer who showed up watched me do the final pass, took my video, and made another report. The family was furious, and I have to tell you, watching a man stay calm while you are trying with everything you have to make him explode is its own special kind of defeat for people like that. They were not used to losing the argument by not having one. That night, they keyed our cars. Both of them, parked in our own driveway. Long, ugly scratches down the side of Hannah's car, which is the nicer of the two, and a big crude scratch across the door of mine. I filed a report with the same officer from the day before. His name was Officer Mathis, and when he saw the address he actually sighed, because he already knew the family. He told me, off the record, that he had no doubt who did it, that he had dealt with these people more than once, but that he could not act on a feeling. He needed proof. Then he gave me the single best piece of advice anyone gave me through this whole thing. He said, "Get cameras. Real ones. Get angles on everything. Your driveway, your yard, the street, the fence line. Make it so that the next time they do something, they do it on film." So that is exactly what I did. The harassment did not stop while I waited for the cameras. It multiplied. I was out of town for work for a few days, and Hannah held the fort, and when I got back the phone calls started. The first night home, around midnight, after we had been asleep a couple of hours, my phone started ringing. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th I answered without saying anything, and it was Brett. He actually said his own name, slurring, clearly drunk, and started calling me names. I hung up and blocked the number. A minute later a text came through from him. "Stay safe, neighbor," with a little sleeping face after it. I blocked that number too. Then the calls came in from restricted numbers over and over, until I just turned the phone off. The next morning there was a message on Hannah's phone, because of course he had her number too, informing us that a branch of one of our trees was hanging an inch over his driveway, and that if we did not trim it, he would call the city on us. That was the night it stopped feeling like an annoyance and started feeling like a threat. Brett liked to remind the whole street that his family had a big farm out in the county, plenty of land, plenty of equipment, the kind of place that has firearms in every closet. We do not own a single one. By choice. And he knew that. I sat up the rest of that night by the front window, watching the dark yard, listening, because I knew he was drunk, and I did not know what a drunk man with a grudge does at 2 a.m. Nothing happened. But I did not sleep. And somewhere in those quiet hours by the window, while I was at the lowest I had been through the whole mess, something in me went very, very calm. I stopped being scared and I started being patient. I realized that everything Brett was doing, every call, every text, every scratch and every can in my yard, was a brick. And I was going to build something out of all of those bricks. He just did not know it yet. There is a thing I think about when I get angry. You never make a move until you can see the whole board. I had been collecting pieces for months without a plan. Now I had a plan, and the plan was very boring and very simple, and it was going to bury him. The plan was this. I was going to do absolutely nothing he could see, and I was going to write absolutely everything down. The Monday after that sleepless night, I ordered 8 cameras, the good kind, and paid to have them professionally installed. Driveway, both curb lines, the front porch, the backyard, the fence line, the street corner where the cans always landed. Within a week, my house had eyes on every direction a person could approach from. I did not hide them. I wanted them visible. I wanted Brett to see them and think they were a bluff. Then I built the folder into a binder. I am not exaggerating. A real 3-ring binder, organized by date. The original police report from the debris in November. Frank's printout of Tara's social media post about drugs and child services, dated, every single time-stamped photo of his family's cars lined up in front of my house. Day after day after day. The report from the mowing incident, with my video saved in 3 places. The report from the cars being keyed. A log of the midnight calls with the exact times, the screenshot of the Stay Safe Neighbor text, a note about the restricted calls, and a screenshot of the threats sent to Hannah about the tree. I even saved the cans. I bagged a week of them, photographed them in the yard first, and kept a tally of how many turned up and on which mornings. I made an appointment with a lawyer, just an hour of her time, to make sure I understood what I had and what to do with it. She looked through the binder and told me 2 things I will never forget. The first was that I had, in her words, one of the cleanest harassment records she had seen a regular person assemble. The second was that the most powerful thing I had going for me was that I had never reacted. There was not a single piece of paper in that binder, not one video, not one text, where I had done anything but stay calm and document. In any story Brett tried to tell, I was the quiet guy who mowed his own lawn, and he was the man on film surrounding that guy with 8 people. She told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing, to report every incident formally so it built an official pattern, and to wait for the cameras to catch the one big thing that would let the law finally move. I did not have to wait long, because Brett could not help himself. The first thing the cameras caught was small and stupid and perfect. About 2 weeks after they went up, the footage showed Brett's truck rounding the corner late one night, slowing down right at my property line, and Brett's arm coming out the window to chuck a fistful of cans and bottles into my yard, the same way he had been doing all winter. Clear as day, his plate, his face, his arm, my grass. I did not run out and confront him. I added it to the binder, and I waited for something bigger, because I could feel that something bigger was coming. It came on a Friday night. The cameras caught Brett's truck weaving badly coming down the street, well over the line, and as he pulled in, he clipped a parked car hard enough to crunch the bumper and knock a mirror clean off, and then he just kept going into his driveway like nothing had happened. The car he hit belonged to one of his own garage sale customers, parked, as always, in front of my house. I had the whole thing on video, from 3 angles, time-stamped, with the impact, the damage, and Brett stumbling out of the truck afterward. This was no longer a feeling. This was a drunk hit and run on camera. I called Officer Mathis directly the next morning, the way he had told me to, and I handed over everything. The hit and run footage, the can tossing footage, the binder, the whole pattern, 6 months of it, organized by date, with my own conduct spotless on every page. I will never forget the look on his face as he flipped through it. He told me this was the kind of documentation that does not just close one complaint, it ends a problem. And it did. It just took a little while to land, the way these things do. Brett was arrested and charged for the hit and run and the driving while impaired. The damaged car owner pressed it. With the Dewey on the books, the harassment record I had built suddenly had teeth, and Mathis walked me through filing for a protective order based on the midnight calls, the texts, the keying, and the pattern. The order went through. Brett was now legally barred from contacting me or Hannah and from coming onto our property at all. The man who had spent 6 months trying to provoke me into one bad moment was now the one with his name on a court document, ordered to stay away. Then the city got involved, because I had also, very quietly, filed a request about the permit history on that roof job from back in November. There had never been a permit pulled. None. The whole roof had been redone with no permit, which meant it was now a code violation, which opened a door. And once a code officer is at your address looking at one thing, he tends to notice the others. The unpermitted roof became a stop work order and a fine. The garage encroaching over the property line got formally flagged. The pile of junk and debris that had migrated around their yard all spring became a nuisance citation. 3 citations, taped to his door, just like I told you at the start. And because the roof had been stopped half-finished, it sat there open and leaking through every rainstorm that summer, a problem they now could not legally touch and could not afford to fix. Here is where I tell you about the chorus, because this is the part that made all of it feel less like revenge and more like the truth finally getting room to breathe. Once it became clear that someone had finally stood up to this family without blinking, the whole street came out of the woodwork. Frank, the retired man across the way, gave a written statement about everything he had watched over the years, including the social media post he had saved for me. He told me, and I quote, "I have wanted someone to do this for 15 years, son. I just never thought it would be the quiet guy who mows on Sundays." A woman 2 doors down came forward about her own keyed car from 2 summers back. Another neighbor had video of Brett's truck clipping their mailbox in the spring. It turned out almost everyone on the block had a story, and almost everyone had been doing exactly what I did at first, which is to say nothing and hope it would pass. And then there was the detail that made my jaw drop, because it told me this was who they had always been. A few of the longtime neighbors told me that Brett, Tara, and Donna had all 3 at one point held no contact orders against each other. Each other. The three of them. They had all worked at the same warehouse at the same time, and management had eventually had to let all three go in a single afternoon because the no-contact orders between them made it impossible to schedule anyone in the same building. This was a family so addicted to drama that they had legally barred themselves from one another and gotten themselves collectively fired over it. They did not need a villain across the fence. They had always done this. I had just been the first one who refused to play. Naturally, they tried to fight back. They always do. I will give you the rounds. First, Tara went back to the neighborhood's social media page and posted a long, furious message about how I was harassing her family, how I had cameras pointed at innocent people, how I was the real menace on the street. Frank screenshotted it within the hour and sent it to me, and it went straight into the binder. Because a person complaining in writing that they are being filmed while a protective order against them is active is not the flex they think it is. Second, Donna decided the protective order applied to Brett and not to her, so she took up yelling over the fence again, louder than ever. Except now there was an active order in the household and 8 cameras on the property line, and a code officer who already knew the address. The yelling, on film, became a documented violation of the peace and another mark in the official record. She got a formal warning from the same officer she had been screaming past all spring, and after that the fence got very quiet. Third, in pure spite, Brett made good on his old threat and called the city to report my tree branch hanging over his driveway. A code officer actually did come out to look. He measured it, found that my tree was healthy, properly maintained, and not over the line in any way that mattered, and closed the complaint as unfounded. Then, since he was already standing there, he took another long look at the half-finished, unpermitted, leaking roof 8 feet away and added a follow-up note to their growing file. Brett had called the city on me and managed only to get the city to look harder at himself. I could not have scripted it better. Fourth, late one night, a call came through to my phone from a number I did not recognize, and on the voicemail it was Brett, drunk again, slurring something half-threatening and half-pathetic. He had used a friend's phone thinking it would be clever. It was a recorded violation of a protective order with his own name said out loud on it, and it went to Mathis the next morning. That was the last attempt. After that, the comeback stopped because there was simply nothing left to throw that did not land in my binder and make his situation worse. By the end of the summer, Brett was looking at a Dewey and a hit-and-run case, a stack of city fines that grew every month the roof sat open, a protective order he had already violated at least once on record, a wife whose every public outburst was now evidence, and a street full of neighbors who had finally found their voices and were not shy about using them. The half-finished roof leaked through the fall. The fines kept coming. And one cool morning in October, I walked out for my coffee, looked over the fence, and saw a for sale sign in their yard, the same kind of sign that had started this whole thing 11 months before. They were gone by the first snow. I never said a word to them on the way out, and I never got the chance even if I had wanted to, because the protective order made sure of that. The last I ever saw of Brett was the back of a moving truck and a tow truck hauling off a vehicle he had not been allowed to drive in months. A young couple bought the place a few weeks later. They are quiet. They wave when they see us. They keep to themselves. The first week they moved in, the husband came over to introduce himself and apologized in advance if their renovation was ever a bother, and asked very politely where the property line ran so they would be sure to stay on their own side of it. I almost laughed. I told him not to worry about it, and I meant it. People ask me sometimes how I kept from snapping, with all of that going on for the better part of a year. The honest answer is that I figured out the trick early. Brett did not want my yard or my parking or my silence. He wanted my reaction. The reaction was the whole prize. Every time I refused to give it to him, I was not being weak, and I was not letting him win. I was starving him. And while he was starving, I was quietly writing everything down. The more I ignored them, the worse they got, until ignoring them and documenting them was the exact thing that beat them. I did not need to fight. I just needed to outlast a man who could not stop handing me ammunition, and then let the people whose job it is to handle that ammunition do their jobs. I think about that text he sent me at midnight when he thought he had me scared. Stay safe, neighbor. For a few hours that night, by the window, it worked. I was scared. But I have come to think he was right, just not in the way he meant it. I did stay safe. I stayed safe by staying calm, by keeping my hands off the situation and my eyes on it. and by trusting that a quiet record beats a loud man every single time. That was the best revenge I have ever taken. And the strange thing is, it never felt like revenge at all. It felt like finally getting to mow my own lawn, on my own Sunday, in peace. Update 1. About a month after it all broke. The Dewey and hit and run case moved forward, and Brett took a plea. I am not allowed to know all the details, and frankly, I do not want them. The damaged car owner got made whole, which is what mattered to me. The city fines on the unpermitted roof had passed a number I will not repeat because it sounds made up. Officer Mathis stopped me at my mailbox to tell me that the binder was being passed around the station as an example of how a regular person should document a problem. I told him to keep my name off it. He laughed and said the calm part was the part nobody could teach. Update 2. A couple of months later. The protective order held, and after the recorded voicemail from the friend's phone, Brett did not test it again. Frank threw a small cookout and invited the whole block, and I learned more about that family in one afternoon of grilling than I had in a year of living next to them. 3 neighbors thanked me by name. One older woman told me she had stopped sitting on her own front porch 2 summers ago because of Donna, and that she had started again. That one got me a little. You do not always realize, while you are just trying to protect your own little corner, that other people have been holding their breath right alongside you. Update 3. 3 months on. The house sold. The new couple is everything you would want in a neighbor, which is to say I barely notice they are there, and that is the highest compliment I can give. Hannah and I got both cars repainted, finally, and the long scratch is gone like it never happened. Theo learned to say the dog's name this winter and yells it across the yard at the top of his lungs, and for the first time in a long time, the loudest thing on our street is a 2-year-old hollering for Biscuit, and honestly, I will take that over silence any day. I still mow every Sunday. I still take pride in the lines. And every once in a while, when I am out there in the quiet with my music in, I think about a smug man and a midnight text. And I smile. And I keep mowing. Stay safe, neighbor.